Number 13, many variants of Christianity. So the question here is, there seem to be many different denominations and churches that disagree with each other on many issues. How can they all be right? And this sometimes comes from skeptics who are anti-Christianity. Sometimes comes from seekers. They're just looking for a church to go to, and they're confused because the churches seem to disagree so much. And there's this wonderful photo called an allegorical composite group of 80 men and one woman prominent in the Protestant Reformation. The one woman, of course, is Elizabeth I, God Save the Queen. I thought that picture summed it up. I mean, there's 80 different figures. Each one of them probably agrees with some of what the others say. Probably disagree with even more. So as an example, and this is just within Protestantism, I don't even get into the differences between Protestantism and Eastern Orthodox and Catholicism in this section. Just within Protestantism. Here are some of the variances that you run into. Believers' baptism versus infant baptism. Is that an issue that all of Protestantism is united on? Baptists, Anabaptists believe in believers' baptism. A lot of Pentecostals believe in the believers' baptism. Presbyterian, Methodist, Anglican, Lutheran, UCC are all typically infant baptism. Immersion versus sprinkling. Let's have pitched battles over this issue. Whether you should be dunked or sprinkled on. Baptist, Anabaptist, some Pentecostals, and again versus Presbyterian, Methodist, Anglican, UCC. Relationship between church and state. Well, the Anabaptists, from their founding, believed in strict separation between church and state, whereas a lot of the other denominations either were the state or they were in close cahoots with the state. Now, we have talked before about John Calvin, and John Calvin was just a simple evangelical preacher who had no elected or appointed authority in Geneva whatsoever. But essentially, while he wasn't the government in Geneva, for 25 years he basically ran Geneva. Same with Zwingli in Switzerland. Church of England, obviously closely aligned with the state of England. The meaning of the Eucharist, or communion, that's one that pretty much every denomination has a slightly different. The meaning of the Eucharist. Catholic Church believes in transubstantiation. They believe that the elements actually turn into the body and blood of Christ during the communion or Eucharist ceremony. Martin Luther believed in consubstantiation, which I've never really understood, but it has something to do with, you have the elements, and the elements stay elements, but whirling around them or up and down or something, Christ is there. I've never really understood it. Symbolic, Zwingli, Calvin believed that the communion ceremony was symbolic. If Christ was present, it's because the believers had the Holy Spirit with them. But there is no magical incantation in the ceremony itself that changes elements, or you're calling God down from heaven because you say certain mystical words. And then another one that I understand less than consubstantiation is Caspar Schwenkfeld had some long-winded thing that he called spiritual something, and I never understood it. So it has something to do with we're nourished by the grain that's in the bread, and God was part of us and something, and I never really understood it. So I'm going to make no.
And you grew up in that church?
I did. I did. Free will versus predestination. Obvious differences there. Methodist versus Presbyterian would be a good example. Methodists are very associated with free will. Presbyterians are very associated with predestination. Baptists are probably primarily free will, but you do run into Baptist churches that are believe in predestination. Sometimes they actually add it to the name. So that's another split. Eschatological beliefs. Eschatological is a cool word meaning the end times. The kids are going, I was going to say like Terminator 2. You know, I thought, yeah. Baptist Pentecostals, holiness movement tend to be premillennialist. I tend to be premillennialist. And actually, if you go back to the reformers, Luther and Calvin, I mean, they were all premillennialists. But we look at the church today. Well, I've asked this before. How many times have you heard a Presbyterian minister give a booming sermon about the end time? Now, Calvin probably gave some booming sermons about the end time. Pacifism, the Anabaptists believe in strict pacifism, as did the early Pentecostals. When the Pentecostal movement first started, Pentecostals were pacifists, but as time went on, that was no longer true. The Amish and Mennonites today still are pacifists. They're the one group that can get almost automatic exclusion from not military service, but combat roles in military service.
They service doctor, they service medical.
They can still get drafted and serve as medics and
same thing for Quakers.
Yeah. Quakers. Yeah.
But the Quakers will happily serve, but in like medical roles.
Yeah.
Right. So it's similar. Role of the Holy Spirit. Well, you have the Baptists, the Pentecostals, and the Methodists who believe that the Holy Spirit is around us, influencing us all the time. But then you have the Presbyterians who are also known as the Frozen Chosen. You have the Anglicans, you have the Lutherans, none of these groups. Of course, we all believe in the Holy Spirit, but our services would not necessarily indicate the prominence or importance of the Holy Spirit.
You've got to tell James about that one.
I think Brian one time said that Presbyterians tend to emphasize the Father, Baptists tend to emphasize Jesus, and Pentecostals and holiness tend to emphasize the Holy Spirit. So, a lot of differences in opinion just among Protestants, which is what this is mostly focused on. So does that mean none of us really know what we're talking about? Does that mean Christianity is ridiculous because none of us can define what Christianity is? Well, no. But Christians, 98% of them pretty much all believe in the basics. So they may disagree on baptism, they may disagree on predestination versus free will. But I should put this carefully now. Almost all Christians believe in the contents of the Apostles' and Nicene Creed. I understand there are non-creedal churches. Some Baptist churches are non-creedal. But if you ask a Baptist, do you accept the Apostles' Creed, they may say no. But if you ask them each clause in the Apostles' Creed, do you believe that God the Father Almighty is the maker of heaven and earth? They'll say yes. Do you believe He had a Son, Jesus Christ? Well, I'm talking about the content of the creeds. They believe Jesus is the divine Son of God. They believe He became human, died, and was resurrected to cleanse the sins of mankind. And they believe that belief in Jesus will result in everlasting life. These are the basics, and 98% of Christians believe in that. Now, there's a few that don't. Let's not even get into Unitarianism. But this is pretty much all Christians believe these things. So I would say belief in the core is what unites us. And belief on the edges, yes, there are disagreements. And I'm not saying they aren't important disagreements. But if you believe these things, you'll be saved. The fact that my Baptist friends believe in believer's baptism and my Presbyterian friends believe in infant baptism, I think they're both going to heaven. But in my opinion anyway, if you don't believe these things, well then you're not going to heaven. This is the definition of Christianity.